Hey, welcome back to Caleb's Shed, and I want to talk to you today about my table saw fence in particular, not just the table saw. I mean, I have the 36 650 Delta contractor 10-inch table saw, and it was a good one. I got it for $650 second hand. It had two wings. It had a sliding table attachment, which on its own is worth about $650. Came with three blades. The old guy was retiring and wanted to give it a good home, and I got it for an absolute song. But the thing about this saw though is because it's so old, if you happen to do something like break a component, perhaps a key component on the table saw, perhaps the fence in particular, the chances of finding a replacement part for that are next to impossible. The piece I broke, which I'm showing you on screen now, was actually the piece that locks the rip fence away, that actually sits in the front track. That's a really bad thing to break, especially because it's powdered metal. Therefore, it's not an easy weld, and by the time you spend all the money on the bits and pieces, you'll need to well, I think it's cool or soft weld, cool weld, warm weld. That particular thing, you've spent a lot of time, effort, expertise, and money on repairing, possibly repairing your table saw fence. So if you're in the market for trying to find replacement parts for your table saw fence, in particular that rip fence piece at the front there, you're stuffed. I looked all over the internet, overseas and locally in Australia, and none to be found. So the only other option was to cough up 250 big ones, well, 250 small ones, 250 ones, 250s of the Australian dollaroonies, and and buy this particular rip fence. It was one of the cheaper ones I found online that met most of my needs. Most of my needs were the following: be as big as the old one. The old one extended the full length of my table saw wing and router table, and it does that. The second thing was be very sturdy and reliable, which this one is. And the third thing was big cheap. Not in terms of its construction, but in terms of its comparative cost to other items that met basic requirements. And it does that at $250. It definitely does. The cheapest I could find other places, other than timbecon, who were selling this for $250. Their fences were a little more expensive than that, but you'll find that out when you go and do your own research. Anyway, come in. I'm going to run you through some features and how I installed this, because I installed it in a non-traditional manner. Because as you can see, I've got the rail on the side for the sliding table. So installing this was not straightforward for me. It was a little bit frustrating. The front fence was fine. The back fence I had to modify. So I'll take you through some of that footage as well. Now here we have the main fence body, as you can see. Fairly big, simple construction, large pieces of metal attached to more large pieces of metal. But there's some nice things about this large piece of metal that I'll point out. This mechanism here is rather lovely. It has two detemp positions. So you can see just in here a small ball bearing that drops out the way, lets you lock it in that position. You can push it past that all the way up, but that gives you a really clear indication that this pressure pad here is out of the way, and then when it moves forward and locks in place, you know that it's locked in place. It's not going to disengage at any point, which is a nice improvement on my Delta fence, to be sure. This big wide cross member here, there's adjustment for either side, pushing it up and down, so you get a smooth ride left and right. But there's also, of course, adjustments here and here to make sure your table saw is as parallel to the blade as possible. On the opposite end, you've got this small Teflon plate on top of a metal plate, and then you've got another piece of metal that wraps around the rear rail. So this actually, once you pull tight on the other end, sits very firm underneath, and this slides very nicely on the rear metal rail. In the top, it has a nice big indent, which is great for storing pencils, small pieces of crap, mobile phones, children's severed fingers, whatever you need to store on the top of your table saw. I don't suggest the last item, but some things happen in the shop. So overall, very simple in terms of its installation. The front rail actually has a couple of tricks. So here's the front rail. It's two main attachments. Now there's actually 4 plates that come with it, and they all come with I think you can see it, there's 2 hole positions in these, which is great because that means you can find the right holes that match yours. As you can see, I've kind of gone center on one and half off on the other, which worked on the front for me, at least on this one. Now there's 2 different types of attachment here that have slightly different holes on the underside. Some of them are slightly smaller than the others, and the others are slightly bigger. You want to go for the slightly bigger ones, so you're not stuck with. They actually have a threaded screw in they're designed for the wings. Those ones. So these ones are the ones that have a larger straight hole, and you'll see that on the instructions, which I should have read the first time. Otherwise, you get a cuss and swear for about 30 minutes wondering why they've got thread meeting thread. Fairly simple there. So on the back I had to make some extra holes in order to fit the rear rail on. None of its standard positions were going to fit. They fit this table saw if it wasn't having the sliding table rail on the side, but because I have the sliding table attachment on there, its holes don't match the existing holes on the back of the table saw. So I made a couple of extra small 8mm holes and then some larger 13mm holes using some creative methods, and then I was able to mount that. Crucial, make sure that that back rail is the same height all the way along, much like your front fence. That way you ensure smooth movement over the entire length of your table saw, and it also makes sure you don't bind up at any point because the fence is trying to be dragged into the table saw top, or the rail on the bottom is being the rail at the back of the table saw fence here gets pulled up too high because the rail is constantly dipping down, and so that just binds up and makes it very difficult. So make sure your rear rail is up nice and high. Overall, a good investment of $250 if you have to make it. If your existing fence is functional, don't rush out and buy a new one unless that existing fence is a bit junky. Anyway, I'll see you next time in my shed. I'm Caleb Anderson. Or some crap like that at the end that I'll probably try and never to say ever again. Just gonna say, yeah, that's it. Ciao.